So harvest planning.
There we go.
We when we are planning our harvest, there are some consideration that we need uh, to examine, right? So the first one is the purpose, and the purpose you say, oh, okay, my purpose is to produce to the production harvest to sales, and that's fine. But as you will notice in the future webinars, and now I want to introduce that this is the first webinar of a series of four for for make more sustainable your farming operation. Okay, that's the reason why. And the purpose of the harvest sometimes does not have to be just for commercial production. You can make planning your harvest, for example, for seed production, and ensure you to have a plenty of seeds and varieties that are more suitable for your farm to preserve seeds. So that's just one of the other topics that will be we working in. Pamela, please correct me if I think on April, right? That will be our webinar for seed preservation and reproduction, right?
Yes. So this is like what he's mentioned is the first of a couple series. We will be sharing with you all the dates and links and all that in our newsletter next week. So stay tuned through all the different channels that we post this information. We will be having in February on soil. In March, we'll be talking about pest management. And in April, as Wadis is saying, we will be talking about seed conservation and seedling preparations. So definitely, this is a lot of opportunities for you all. Stay tuned, and we will be sharing all those shortly.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Okay, so let's put the purpose of the harvest aside, and we concentrate in the other three uh, points, right? So we need to have consideration on the season, on the farm, on in our farm characteristic, and more specific in the area of the farm that we will planning to develop that harvest, right? Uh, so we let's break down all of 3 points in the next slides. So one question I recommend to you that you need to make, and sounds really simple, but sometimes it is so simple that we may don't we may so to not put all the attention of on those small details. So one question it is, what do plants need to grow? It is a question that or things that we learn since elementary school, right? So the plants need sunlight, a soil or growing medium, water, nutrients, and air. uh, the first 4 bullets will be discussing kind of more specific in the next slides. Air, I just gonna say that the plants need good ventilation and good airflow to minimize the humidity in the environment, right? Because if you have a higher humidity, especially in where we are in the tropics, because Bahamas is a little bit at north of our tropic, but just for 2 degrees, it's keep being tropic. Okay, so we have a high humidity in the air, and that could be a significant factor for more disease of plants to propagate. Right. So that's it's what I just say about the air. It's all resumed in the specific and the right spacing between plants and the rows too. Okay. And I just put here growing medium because this picture is it was taken by me a few months ago when first week of work in USBI. It's in the farm name Tropic Hydroponics from our friends there, and this is a production system that does not use soil. So this kind of system is named Dutch buckets. If I remember well, at the very bottom of the picture, you can say at the right, you can see some greenhouses, and there are other kind of hydroponics name NFT. It's nutrient field. I forgot, but it is NFT. Those are the initials for the system. So no matter if you are using this kind of system or soils, so you need to have the same considerations to design your harvest and your planting, right? Especially with the sunlight. Most of the crop requires 6 to 8 hours of direct light. And I put there on bold because, as in my experience, sometimes I was previously to work with Work Central Kitchen. I worked uh, I consider for around 3 to 4 years as independent contractor, and some people call me that they are experiencing problem with pest or with disease or with the plants were not growing in the right conditions. And by the in the phone, I asked them how are they having enough light from 6 to 8 hours, and they say yes, they have light, but when I go there, it was light of the day, but not direct. So what we means by direct light, it is that in each part of the field that the crop will be, if you stand at any point, you can see direct the sun. That is direct light of the sun. Okay. So most of the vegetables and short period crops, even the fruit trees, needs between 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight. So what we need to consider to have in consideration to determine which area it is better are that they have plenty of that lights, and we need to see or look for the object that casts shadow as the sun moves through the day and according to the season of the year. And in the next slide, I will be explaining more about in the way the season of the years have an impact in the shadow, because sometimes in summer you have plenty of sun, but then in winter some objects that don't cast shadow during the summer could be an obstacle for direct sunlight, right? uh, other factor is that in the tropic where we are, our the more long days are during the summer, but in the summer it's our rainy season too. And with those and the clouds during this season could maybe have the potential to cause a problem with the direct sunlight because they block the radiation. So that could happen in summer, and if you and my recommendation for this is during the summer, we can move have a season for some crops that are not highly demand on light, okay, and they are tolerant to heavy water too, right? Uh, Here, the other bullet here is in the latitudes north of to the equator, the slope facing to south are usually more favorable. So I think in Bahamas that will not be a big deal because they are not many so high uh, mountains or hills. But in Puerto Rico, for us, that is a big deal because we have a central zone in the area. The central mountain of the areas can cast a significant amount of shadows during the winter season. As well, in Sand Croix, in the to the mountain of Sand Croix, that would be a consideration that you need to have uh, for this reason. So let's make a review on basics of geography. So here is our prairie and precious planet, right? So we are located Puerto Rico, and actually we can consider near part of these two because it's just 2 degrees above of the what we call the Tropic of Cancer. So all of us are located in the north of the equator line. This equator in the centers that run from left to right, it's equator, and all of the latitude 0 to the latitude 23.5, it's considered the Tropic of Cancers. What that's mean? That's mean that during the year of our seasons, the suns move from north to the south. In our summers, the north will be in the more northern point in the Tropic of Cancer, right? So our longest day during the year are the 21st of each June, which is the solstice of summer. After this day, the sun start to move to the south and reaches the southern point on the 21 of December, which is the solstice of the winter solstice, right? So during this period, it's a coincidence with our dry season where we can plant more of the vegetables, right? So that's the reason you need to be sure that no object at the south of your area of plantation of planting or your farm can cast any shadow during this time. Okay. So right here it is another images of what happens during the rotation of the Earth's around the sun, right? So at your upper right side of this image, it is how sunlights come to us during the summer. At the right it is what happens during the winter, and that's the reason why in the southern latitudes under equator, so they have the interchange the seasons from us. What when it's summer for us, for them are winter, and vice versa. Okay. Other consideration that we need to have when we are planning our harvest is the soil. And I just want to point here, I'm a really enthusiastic of the soil. For me, soil it is one of the more important natural resources. Actually, for you to have water and air of quality, your soil needs to be working in optimal conditions. Okay, so that this is so for this reason and many more, it is really really important for us to have a really good soil management. And it's a start just to make an evaluation of the soil, starting for a visual evaluation. um, we will go. Okay, let me stop here. So we will be break down every of those 5 bullets, but let's start with visual evaluation. By the way, I just want to mention that this picture there at your right, it is a profile of soils of a soils in Puerto Rico, located in the southeast part of the island. And I want to mention to our friends in St. Croix. So this soil, it's really really alike of most of the soils that I saw there when I was visiting some farms. Uh, if I remember well, from Samuel Grandley that is present, this soil is kind of is a quite similar from your soil. Okay, so let's see what we need to make through our visual evaluation. First, first of all, I recommend to the people to look at the color of the soil. Right here, we have 5 examples of different color, right? So sometimes, and most part of the time, the color of the soils are related to the level of to the pH level or acidity of the soil. More reddish soils tend to have lower pH, and more dark soils tends to have a higher or neutral pH. It is not, it is not an absolutely, but most part of the time you can relate the color of the soil to the pH. Okay. So what you will do if you have a reddish soil that you think you will have a lower pH. So there are a few simple practice to improve this. Okay. So so simple as just add organic matter, or other way it's to add lime, uh, limestone, right? That is the most common practice to improve the pH of your soil if it's so low. Okay. Other thing it is when you're walking on your area, look for this kind of depression you see in these other pictures. So sometimes if you see this with a spot of the dry weeds there, that will indicate you. So this part of your farm, it's prone to accumulate water during heavy rain events. Okay, and you don't want this to happen while the crops are there. So there are some other practice that will help you to deal with this kind of problem on your soil. Okay, and some of them we will see it in the next slides. Other thing that you need to look is for this kind of event in the soils. What you see here is a clay crust in the upper layer of the soil, and when the soil is bare, sometimes if it happens some water ponding or water ponds or accumulation of water, and the soil is really compacted, the water will not infiltrate through the soil profile. And when it is evaporated, they left this film of clays, and that is the reason that's why this cross happened. If you see this in your farm, you probably will make or need to do a more heavy tillage to your soil to improve the physical characteristic and the infiltration in the soils too. Okay. Other thing to consider for the soil wellness is what I call adequate tillage, or you can find in the literature, or if you search on internet, some it's also called conservation tillage. So not all the tillage or typical tillage or conventional tillage is suitable for your soil. So that's the reason why you need to know a little bit more your soil, right? So sometimes in some places it's really easy to send some samples to a laboratory and have all those information in a report, but in other parts or other countries it's not so simple. So when we going to talk about this and the way you can make a texture test in your farm just with some simple steps. Okay, so in our webinar of soil, we will be talking and explaining how you can determine your soil texture just by using your hands. Okay, but back to the tillage or adequate tillage to your soils. There are plenty today. Nowadays, there are plenty of equipment that you can use to this. And I will now introduce another concept I use. It is the adequate technologies. And what I mean for adequate technologies are technologies that are really suitable for you operation and your farms. And sometimes, no matter how old it's the technology, keep being the most useful for your operation. That's the reason why we have some oxen there, because oxen nowadays keep being same useful as decades ago. Okay, for example, where the slopes are really heavy, so we can use the best traction you can use to plow the soil are animal traction. uh, Oxen are really helpful with this. At same, if you are managing a small farm, so you can invest, and I know they are kind of popular on USBI. The picture you have at the upper right part of the screen, those are two-wheel tractors or walk behind tractors, and they are really useful, and they can done a lot of heavy duties that you need to do in your farm. In the center, they are our traditional or conventional tillage system, and it is consists mostly part of the times they recommend, or the standard recommendation, what I really don't like to use those recommendations because, as I mentioned, all the farms are really different. But in the conventional agriculture or industrial agriculture, the one we have after the Green Revolution, I don't know if all of you are related for of what is Green Revolution, but Green Revolution was the event that start or create all of these kind of crazy practices that we have today in industrial agriculture, that 70 years after shows that they are really detrimental to the environment, and many of the production done by this way are not the production that it is feeding the world, right? But we can talk to this a more in other time. But back to the conventional plow. So the standard recommendation for many farms are to two cuts with the disc plow, and then just pass in a harrow, an mounted harrow or harrow disc to pulverize the soils. Sometimes if you over plow your soils, you will be affecting really deep, and that can have effects on the use of water, use of nutrients, and the development of root system of our crops. And that's what we don't want to have in our fields. We want to have a living soil that can be capable to provide all the nutrients and everything that plants demands to grow healthy and have the best production that we can have, right? That's the reason why soil is a key stone of agriculture and good agriculture. Okay, so to keep talking about this, another conservation technique for your soil are to control the erosion and the runoff. So right now, we will be focusing in what is erosion control and runoff management. So I know in in both parts in USBI and in the Bahamas, the slopes in the farms are not so uh, hard or heavy as we have in Puerto Rico. But no matter if they are just three, 4, 5, or 6 degrees of slope in your farm, it is highly recommend that you make your planting using the contour. And what is the contour? Contour, it's just to plant in the horizontal to the slope. You know, uh, in many other parts in Latin America, for example, is a common practice. But for example, in Puerto Rico, we abandoned this around 30 years ago, and it was it has been really harmful to our mountain area farms. Okay, so what we do with this is just to make the contour in our slopes and plant against that slope to control the erosion. That will help to improve the soil, to help to accumulate more organic matter, and to control heavy control of runoff water. So at your right part of the screen, at the upper part is an slope of the farm just planted with a lot of vegetables or leafy vegetables. So that's the way it looks. So at the very bottom, I include this at the right very bottom. I include that picture because it is a good example of a farm that does not have a big slopes planted by the contour. And by the way, in our soil management webinar, I will be showing you how you can make a tool that you can build in your home for less than $10 to help you to determine the contour of your farm. And for the people in USBI, NRCS from USDA, they can make this kind of service if you're a participant with them. They can go to your farm and mark the contour from your planting. Okay. The other thing it is the runoff management, and when we have slopes, uh, plus we make our planting in by the contour, we it's highly recommend to have a system of ditches and swales. Okay, in this slide, what we are seeing are ditches. I will explain in the next one the difference between swales and ditches. Ditches tend to be more smaller and not so deep in the soil, and they are the channels that you will use to move the water outside of your harvest or your planting area, and direct this to the swales. Okay, swales tend to be more higher, and the most part of the swales, as you see here at your right, swales don't have a huge decline to move the water. In the other hand, the ditches have a more are more have a higher decline to move water. With the ditches are the small channel you use to move the water outside of your planting area. So that's the reason why, if you look the arrow, that's the reason why is this arrow in this direction. You are moving with the dishes. You want to have 2, 3, sometimes up to 5% of decline to help you to move this water outside of your planting area. Then it is highly recommend to have a big swale. It is what you see at your right, and and the other illustration in at the right, in the bottom at the right of the illustration. So swales are more bigger. They tend to be kind of round shape in the bottom, and sometimes the decline in the soils are just around like 1 to 2%, because you want one of the service that you will have with the swales are the water infiltration. What you want is not just to move this water, keep the runoff in some direction with the soil. Soil will help you to infiltrate water through the soils. And this is really important, because that is what guarantee you to recharge if you are using a deep well, or any aquifer. That will help to recharge uh, those. Okay, so it's what I really recommend, to design and a good system of ditches and soils that will help us uh, to manage the water, to the runoff water in the best way. Other factor or consideration we need to have in mind when we are uh, planning our harvest, it is the water. Water, it is, without water, you cannot make agriculture. And now, facing the effects of an changing climate, of the climate change, what we are expecting of this in our tropic, it is to have the same or higher rainfall, but in a shorter period. So that's the reason why I always advise to the farmers to look for an adequate storage of water. And by the way, I don't know how many of you have uh, um, know how much water crops demand. Okay, so when attached with the presentation, when Pamela send you the email with this presentation, we will include more information, and I will include some tables with this kind of information of some of most common crops and their water demand. Okay, so that's the reason why we need to ensure that we have plenty of water, and we use the water in the best way. So right here you can see a picture of both of these are the most common water storage that we use, or source of water that we use in farms. At your left, you have a pond. This pond, it was done in a farm in Puerto Rico from one of our new participants of the program in the west side of the area. So this pond was designed by NRCS from USDA, and this pond not just catch rainwater, but with a system of ditches and swales, uh, direct all the runoff water to this swale, and it is in the most is located in the lower part of the farm. And he used this water for his irrigation system. At your right, you have the most common source of water in Puerto Rico. I know in most part of the Caribbean, and in most part of the world. So one of the most useful use funds of water is that it's are the deep wells. What's the problem with the deep wells? If you overuse, if you have and use higher, if you use a higher volume that the recharge volume, you will run out of water. And if you are near to the coast, you can maybe have some introduction to this well of salty water, and that would be a huge problem, right? So that's the reason why we need to use water in the best way and to secure to recharge those this kind of our wells. And saying this, that's the reason of our next slide. So it's highly recommend to use an efficient irrigation system. Most common systems are the aerial irrigation system, as the one you see in the center and in the left upper left side of the screen. So if your case is that you will use this kind of system, I highly recommend to use uh, the picture of the upper left, because those sprinkle, they break the water in really small particles and use much more less water than the center one. The center one is what we know as a water canyon, and not just use the water in non-efficient way. The impact in the soil that have when the water hit the soil is really heavy. And by the way, if you want to see it, you can go to YouTube or to the Google and Google it, the impact, look for a video where is with a heavy zoom of the drop water hitting the soil, and you will see how soil is affected by the heat of water. So you don't want to have this kind of system. They are not they don't use water in an efficient way, and they have an heavy impact of your soil. I highly recommend to use this kind of your at the bottom of the right. This is a drip system. Drip system are the most efficient systems, right? And by now they are not they are not expensive as they were 15 or 20 years ago. So by the way, so the tape of that grid tape is kind of it's kind of have a good price. And I recommend you to, once you finish your harvest season, you can storage this kind of tape and use it again. In my experience, so I have some of those lines of drip lines that I've been using for around 5 years, I think. Sometimes they break, but if they don't break, they keep being useful. And by doing this, you are securing to do not have a lot of waste on your farm too, or keep producing more waste. Okay. So drip irrigation system, they put the water where the water needs to be. Okay. And they will help you to use much more less water than the aerial system. Other thing you need to have in consideration when you're planning your harvest are the nutrients. The nutrients what source for your crop. You know, most of our participants, they relies on conventional fertilizer, as the one you have at the left part of your screen. uh, that they could be granular or they can be liquid and be applied through the fertigation. But in the way you can have or you can done a soil test or for the fertility of your soil, it is better, because this kind of fertilizer have a huge impact on the soil and the environment, and in the cost of production, right? On the production cost. So you want to use this in the more efficient way. In the other hand, you have other sources for provide nutrients. especially in what is organic agriculture or agroecology or sustainable agriculture. So, most of those operations relies on the highly inputs of organic matter. More specific, one of the most reliable sources of nutrients and to organic matter are the compost. As you see on the upper picture at the right side, those are some piles of compost, and the compost we will be talking uh, in one of our next webinars about the compost, how to make it, how to ensure to have a good quality of compost. And I just want to add, the compost is what I call, it is not a fertilizer. For me, it's a super fertilizer, because they can make a really, really, really difference in your soil, not just to provide by providing um, not just by providing nutrients, but by helping with the water storage, to promote the life in soils, and many, many other good reasons to use it. Okay. At the bottom left side of your screen, you see this kind of plants, and those plants, those one are specific plants named sun hemp. Sun hemp, it's one of the a variety of cover crops. Cover crops are plants that you use to add fertility to your soil, to improve fertility of your soils, especially when you're using plants from the Fabaceae family. They have the characteristic, or the ability to create a symbiosis with a symbiotic relation with a soil-borne bacteria named Rhizobacterias, or Rhizobium. So those bacteria, they will be moving to live inside the roots of this kind of plants, and they can fix the nitrogen in the air. The most the higher storage of nitrogen in the world, it is the atmospheric nitrogen. So 70% of the air we breathe are nitrogen, right? And nitrogen is one of the most uh, dim, uh, with the highly demand nutrients by the crops, right? So those kind of plants have that ability to fix nitrogen to the soils. And by using this, you can ensure a significant amount of nitrogen in your soils. For example, I know in USBI, our newest participant for this round in Art Farm, they have a few varieties of cover crops. Some of them from can make this. And I around a month ago, I sent to them some seeds from other kind of this kind of these plants that we use in Puerto Rico to be tested there. So once again, in one of the next webinar, we will be we will be go more deeply in how to use cover crop to provide nutrients and improve your soil fertility. Okay. Other maintenance activities that you need to keep to have in mind when you are planning your harvest are the weed control and pest and disease control, because that will be the best way to deal with it is in the preventive way. And when you're planning your harvest, so with a good planning and some simple practices, you can ensure to don't have a highly incidency of pests. Same to make the weed control uh, work are a kind of easier, and that will help you. Uh, that could have the potential to help you to minimize the use of chemical weed control, to use of herbicides, especially, so the herbicides in the recent years, all the time we have more and more evidence that that effect, the detrimental effect that they have in our environment and in our health, right? So, but we're gonna talk about it and discuss this in our pest management webinar, So we will be covering this in that webinar in around 2 months. Okay. Other thing you need to have in mind when you're planning your harvest, and that will help you uh, to have a good production, is your seed selection. What I'm referring to seed selection, it is maybe I've been planting in my farm some kind of a kind of tomato, any variety of tomato, but there are plenty of varieties of crops, right? So what I advise it is to make some essays of varieties on your farm and make the selection of the best variety that adapt to your conditions and your production. Once you do this, you can ensure to have uh, a seed supply or adequate seed supply for your farm. And that's the reason why I want to explain what are those three kind of more common seeds we find in the market. So we have what are open pollinated varieties. Open pollinated varieties are varieties that you can just purge the seed just one time, and then if I harvest for seeds, I can assure to replant those same seeds no matter how many generations I keep. I continue planting the same seeds. So we all the time will have the same crop with the same characteristics. And my advice is, in the way possible for you to have this kind of crop in your farm, will be better, because you will be making the adaptation to that varieties to the conditions of your farms and your way of work. In the way you can uh, make this practice in your farm, you will secure and will be more resilient to any event, because if you have an acid storage, you can keep producing. The other kind of open pollinated crops or seeds are the ones named heirloom seeds. A heirloom seed is a variety of any crop that will be being harvested for many generations, for more than 50 years. Okay. And that's the reason that they are named heirlooms. Like, if you name for in your family, you have some heirloom jewelry or something like this, that the reason those crops are named in this way. And sometimes are the best varieties to produce because they have a lot of good traits. Other seeds you can find in the market and are the hybrid varieties, or commonly named F1 varieties. So what is an hybrid seed? An hybrid seed is this: is when you take two parents varieties that have they have some specific traits that you want to maximize and combine to produce this variety uh, with your desired traits, right? Let's put in this way. So the red tomato you have here have uh, any amounts of traits that you want to combine with the other traits of the yellow tomato, and you have this F1 or hybrid variety that combines all of those traits and will help you to, sometimes the hybrids are developed for pest resistance or for drought resistant, or mainly they are produced for high production, to have a highly production. But the thing with those kind of seeds, it is that you could not harvest seeds to replant. If you replant the seeds, you will be have a harvest with a lot of varieties of the traits. That's the reason that the picture at the bottom, it's an example of what happens when you harvest seeds from a hybrid variety and replant. So you have so a lot of different sizes of fruits in this case, and that's will not good, because for commercial purpose, it is not recommended. Okay, so that's the reason why F1 varieties. The thing is that you all the time that we want to replant, you need to uh, purge again and again and again the same variety to ensure you will all the time have the same kind of fruits or produce, right? Uh, my recommendation is, for example, when and I will use my experience as this in the tropic, some of our crops are really difficult to produce seeds, or it is impossible because they need from a winter period of dormancy to produce flowers and then seeds. For example, carrots. In my case, for me it does not matter if they are hybrids or not, because in Puerto Rico I will not harvest, or they will, or that crop will not produce seeds, right? So that's depend of your that will depend of what you are looking for. But for me, I would just buy hybrids from this kind of crops. For onions, carrots, even lettuce can produce seeds here, but to harvest seeds from the lettuce, or to produce lettuce seeds, that's take it's kind of challenging, right? Because the seeds are so small. For me, in my case, I don't mind if I push this kind of hybrid seeds, because I will all the time, I prefer to buy, not to produce, because for the time I have is not enough to employ producing this kind of seeds. So that's the reason why you can use hybrid seeds. I'm not saying you if you are using hybrid seeds for all your crops, and it's suitable for you, so it's good. Uh, Other thing it is, if hybrid could become an an open pollinated varieties, yes, this is what we call uh, improvement varieties or improved varieties. For example, this guy there holding this nice maize cup. It's this maize cup. It's from a new variety of cup of corn. My bad, of corn, that it was developed around like 4 or 5 years ago. So it is another practice that they are people, they are working just to produce new varieties with more improved traits. And what they do, they are keeping there is what we call plant breeders. Breeders, they are dedicated to produce new varieties of crops with, as I say, with desired traits. And what they do is, for a long period of time, they keep making some crosses of varieties. Then when are starting to harvest uh, plants with the traits they want, they are they start to make selection of the plants that have those traits, and uh, and keep improvement, and keep improve those traits. And the same one they have, they stabilize the variety, they increase the amount of seeds. And one it is at this point, they are a new varieties and improved varieties. But this can take probably to 3, 5, 4 years, and maybe it could take, depending on of the crop, more than a decade. Okay, so it's highly time demand. And by the way, that's the way the humans start to make agriculture and set the basis for civilization, by domesticate the seeds. That is what set the base for civilization, right? So I'm explaining all of this because no one of those kind of seeds are GMOs. GMOs are really different seeds, okay? GMOs are seeds that are genetically engineered in labs to manage some of their genes, or introduce some other traits during the genetic engineering, and in the market they are not so common. It is not like you will go to order seeds from egg suppliers and they will send you GMOs from eggplant for same in some way. So the most commonly crops with GMOs are uh, corn, soy, cotton, if I remember well, sugar beet, and I think those are the main ones. So, and GMO seeds are highly expensive, right? And in my personal recommendation, always avoid GMO seeds because they are not produced to help farmers. They mostly or broadly produced to help industries to gain more money. Okay. Okay, once we have all of those consideration, we select our seed, we have everything set. What other thing that is important is to set our harvest calendar. And a harvest calendar is key to maintain a constant supply of produce since to considers our availability and demand of the crop in the market, and have in mind not all the crops can be grown through all the years. That's the reason why have a season and have harvest season of different crops is really important. To set our harvest calendar, one of concept that we need to keep in mind is what we call harvest period length. Harvest period length, or HPL, is the period during which a crop can be harvested, producing good quality. It's a specific characteristic of each crop as well as for its varieties. Okay, to explain this in a simple words, so if you have any X uh, crop, so you can harvest for a period. For example, we will be using the eggplant example. The eggplant takes up to 3 months in average to start the harvest. But once you start, the HPL for this crop extend in average for 6 weeks, that you can harvest the eggplants with quality, with commercial quality, right? So that would be your HPL. So I'm explaining this because the frequency with which new planting of the crops are made will depend on the HPL. So the frequency of new planting is proportional to the HPL of the crop. Simple. If your HPL is for 6 weeks, you need to make more new to plant, to seed, or to produce new seedlings each uh, 6 weeks to maintain a constant production of yeast. In the next slide, I will be explaining more easier. Okay, let's keep with the example of eggplants. If I planning to have a production of eggplants by two seasons, right? Uh, in row. So we start to planting the seeds the first at day zero. Okay, day zero is when you make your first seed tray to plant, and I say to make it in this way using trays and seedlings because eggplants it's better to be done by transplanting than to direct seedlings because of the size of the seed. But that's it's a thing that we will be discussing in our webinar for seed and seedling production. So in this day zero, you make your first planting of seeds from eggplants. Okay, eggplant HPL in average are 45 days of harvest. You can harvest eggplants for 45 days. What means that from day zero that you make your first planting, if you want to replace those old plants after 45 days of harvesting, you need to make from day zero at day 45, you need to make new uh, trays or planting new seeds to ensure that when the first round of your plants from eggplant, when they're done with their HPL, you are starting the harvest, the HPL of the second round, and that's ensure you to have a harvest, a constant harvest. Okay, so I will stop here, and if anyone have any question of the things we already discussed, that's the time. So Pamela, how we are doing with the questions?
At this point, Wadis, we don't have a lot of questions. We do have a comment from one of our participants in the Bahamas.
Okay.
When you were talking about slopes, she mentioned that they were flat. So I don't know if you might have any recommendations specifically to farms or projects that have like very, very flat areas.
Yeah, for sure. So I that's the reason I was mentioned that that will not be a huge a huge factor in Bahamas. But as I show in one of the pictures, so no matter if your farm looks like a flat, sometimes they have an slope of 4%, and that's this kind of slope. It's enough to make to set a contour, or if you don't want to set your planting in contour, but four to and slope of 4%, it is enough to make some ditches and soil system to help to manage the waters in heavy rain events.
Hmm. Or
Okay.
even if it's a very, very small slope, there's still a slope.
Yeah, it's still slope, and it's still and sometimes this kind of slope will be enough to cause ponding problems of with water. Okay, so that's the reason why all the time, no matter how slow, no matter how if your slope is not so significant, sometimes you need to evaluate the natural pass of water, or way of run of water. Maybe a swale or some ditches will help you to deal with it.
Awesome. So at this point, we don't have any more open questions, but we are inviting everybody to formally submit your questions. We will be having a couple more breaks in the presentation to have them answered. So yes, we want to make this as interactive as possible. Anything that you might want to have any more details on what Wadis have touched on so far, please feel free to share it in the question and answer.
Okay, so that thing I will say about the HPO, put to make another example. If you one of your main crops are lettuce, lettuce takes around from seed to harvest around 8 weeks, right? But you can just harvest one time. If you plan to have a season of being producing lettuce, you need to make new to planting each week to ensure to have a season that all the weeks you can harvest. In the other hand, other example, it is with carrots. There are some varieties of carrots that they could be harvested as baby as well as a regular. So, for example, if you are producing carrots, and your carrot could be, and the variety of your carrot could be harvest as baby as well as a regular carrot from 45 to 60 days. So I highly recommend to make new to no so to be sowing each 2 weeks for same in for provide other example. Okay, so I think I hope to explain this in the clearest way. So now we will enter into the last two topics of this presentation. When you are planning your harvest, you can make what is intercropping, or association, or crop associations, which means that in your farm you will not have just one crop. And as far I see for example, in St. Croix, um, all the farms we visit there, they were using these kind of techniques. But the important to use the intercropping technique, it is because you are not putting all the eggs in the same basket, as we say here, right? So one of the benefits of the intercropping, have a plenty of benefits. Some of them are increase in productive stability of the agro ecosystem, greater soil protection, lower incidence of weeds, better fertility management, and higher yield per area unit. Okay, what means if you just plant one crop in your entire farm, it's more prone to have losses for events of for weather events or for pest or disease events. When we use intercropping, most part of the time, if we have X problem with X crop, we have other ones that we keep ensuring to have harvest and have a financial income, right? As well, if we make association of crops, if we are planting variety of crops in the same rows, they can have beneficial effects one in each other. Okay, so I will explain this in the first bite with some pictures that I have, and I highly recommend to use the intercropping techniques. Okay, what consideration I need to have when I designing my harvest or my or planting using this technique is to determine the main and the secondary crops. So you will have your main crop could be corn for saying someone, uh, and the secondary crops. So you can use as a secondary crop beans, and your main crop is the corn. While the corn is growing, you can harvest bean and you are maximizing the area. That's the reason why if I have in an acre in intercropping, I will producing a much more amount of produce than if I just employ this acre to have one crop. Okay, and I will explain you how to deal with the spacing, plant spacing when we are doing intercropping. Okay, the crop growth pattern, you don't want to have the same pattern of integrated crops, because they will compete for sun, for water, for nutrients, and we don't want to have this kind of stress in our crops, right? So that's the reason why it's recommend you need to determine the different patterns of growing and combine them. Okay, so they must be from different families. As you know, most of the pest and diseases in the plants, they are so specific to the same families. For example, I will not have an intercropping from tomatoes and and eggplants, because both of them they are Solanaceae family and will share the same pest and same disease. For example, I can combine or make intercropping using eggplants and, for example, I here so here I have a picture of this. Let me just show this. At the right picture, we have eggplants combined with bok choy or Chinese white cabbage. They are from different families. They have different patterns of growing. While the eggplants are getting ready to be harvested, we can harvest this the bok choy. At same, we are covering this soil with other crop, and by this uh, we are ensuring to not have a space for weeds to grow. So we are having most production per unit area. What's you can that's equal for have more money, right? Because our we can sell this too. At the same, we are not we are saving time of work by because we don't have to cut the widths or making width control, right? Those are some of the benefits. So at the left of your screen, this picture, it was from one of courses I was teaching of agroecology, and there is an example of intercropping. So in the first row you have eggplants, then you have a cabbage, a kale too, then you have some squash. Then at the bottom of the picture you can see those are corn plantation. And before of this, so small, we have a row of different leaf uh, crops. Okay, so those are an example of how looks the intercropping. If you plan to have associate crops in the same rows, to deal with the how you determine the exact spacing for those crops in the rows, it is easy. If the plant spacing of crop E are 60 per 60 centimeters, and for the one of you that are not related to the metric system, so 30 centimeters equals to 1 feet, okay, or 12 inches. So right here, if your crop plant spacing, it's 24 inches by 24 inches rows and plants within the rows, and your crop that you want to associate with and make association in the same rows, the distancing on the or the spacing is 20 by 20. What you don't, it's you make an average. You assume the 60 plus 20, that's equal to 40, and our spacing will be 40 centimeters. What it means, if each 40 centimeter you will have a different plant. If you are, let's keep using eggplants as example. If you are using eggplants, your 40 centimeter you have an eggplant, then 40 centimeters far from this you have a bok choy in this case, and 40 centimeter then you will have an eggplant, and all the way in your entire planting row. Okay, so that's the way you deal with the right or yeah, with the right crop spacing when you are making association of crops in your production. Okay, really easy. And I just put this picture here because this is a beautiful and gorgeous example of intercropping in a farm. This farm is located in Cuba, around like 40 minutes far from Havana. The name is Finca Marta. You can find there in the web. And right there, you see a plenty of different crops, and they are doing intercropping since they start. And the production there, it's really really amazing as well. They keep records for everything. So by the time I went there in December 2019, they does not have more room for new clients. Each week they have a list of restaurants and individuals that purge from their farms. And what they did by planning their harvest well for the past 6 or 7 years is to ensure to all the time have clients and sales all of their crops. But they have a record for each crops that they plant, the way the crop behave, and all the things. And my advice, in the way I know work as a farmer is highly demand of time, but in the way you can keep record of everything, that will help you to planning better or better all your harvest year after year, right? If you need more or want more information on how to keep those records, just let me know. I will share my contact in a few moments. So just let me know, and I will send you uh, some recommendations on how to keep your records of production on farm. Okay. Last thing I want to show you, it's this term. It is what is crop rotations, and when you're planning your harvest, I again advise to use this technique. This technique was widely used before industrial agriculture, and some of the benefit of this are in to resume. are to make easier your production. Okay, when you rotate your crops, you will be securing to break with the life cycle of some of the pests, to not overexploit your soil, nutrients, okay, storage, and many other good results that will be have using crop rotations. Okay, what you need to have in consideration at the time or plan your harvest by use this technique are the nutritional demands of the crops, the root systems, type of vegetation, and pest and disease. What means that if you are planting in this lot this time lettuce, you will not plant again any plant of the same family. By this, you can change in this plot. If you were harvesting lettuce, the next cycle of harvest there could be peppers, because they are a different farm. They are you harvest the fruit, not the leaf, and they are really different in nutrient demands as well as in pest. Okay, as you can see there, the purpose is not to is to reduce the incidence of pests and disease, and also not to overexploit the soil's nutritional reserves. And this graphic show you how to make in the right way the crop rotations. Each of those colors represent a different plot in your farm, and in the way that could be rotated, right? If you are having in the blue, for example, you have root vegetables, in the green you have leaf. In the next cycle, the roots will go where the leaf was, and all the time clockwise. This is the most simple way to planning your harvest using crop rotation. As well as I just mentioned, please change the families from plot to plot. Okay, that's it's an integral part of this. And the other thing you can do is integrate a cover crop for improve your soil fertility inside that rotation. You know, you can have three crops lots and been rotating with one at the time, one once a time. This plot will be so with cover crop to improve the fertility of the soil. Okay, so that's one of the other thing I recommend to use it if to integrate to crop rotations. I understand. So some of the some farms, they are small farms, and sometimes they need to be all the time just planting crops for production of vegetables or fruits to keep make the right numbers in sales to sustain the operation. If it is the case, I advise to all the time you harvest and will be changing the crop to add some organic matter to the soil, and in this way you are securing to have enough nutrients as well to not overexploit your soil. Okay, so okay, thanks for your attention.